Us as we do the Pledge of Allegiance and have a moment of silence. Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Welcome to the October 4th School Board Study Session. Dr. Wood, do we have any public participation?
There were no requests for tonight.
Thank you, sir. Our first item on the agenda is Sally Burchett Park and Recreation Carmel Tennis Complex First View.
Good evening. My name is Sally Burchett. I'm the Director of Montgomery County Parks and Recreation, and I am here to just give you an update on a proposal that we have before the school board and before the school system for a tennis complex at Carmel Elementary. So when Carmel was constructed, there were plans for there to always be a park in the future development of that property. And so with that, we had not really thought about what exactly is that going to look like. There were some really rudimentary designs that were put out right when the school was constructed, but it just kind of has sat. We have recently been approached by USTA, the United States Tennis Association. They're very interested in coming to Clarkson, Montgomery County, and they're very interested in helping us pay for design and potentially construction of a tennis facility in our community. So when we were approached about that, we felt like this might be a great location for a tennis complex for our community that would be able to be used as a park and for tourism opportunities with outside tournaments and things, but it would also be a benefit to our school system and be somewhere where the district and the regionals and all of those tournaments can be played for school play as well. So recently we have, with the school system, gone back and done a resurveyed the property as it currently stands to see, after Carmel has been in the space for a while, they have additionally added some gardens and some different sheds and things on the property, so we wanted to make sure that we were not taking up any additional space that they are currently utilizing. So the current survey just came back, and it is has been sent to the school system, and there are the facilities team is on board with this new layout and what portion of the property would be able to be utilized for parkland. What we are requesting now is that USTA does require that the property be in the name of the county for us to be able to get the grants for design and construction. Right now it is in the school's name, and so we are requesting that just this portion of the property be renamed back into Montgomery County's name to be able to move forward on this construction. We are open to, if construction is not done within a certain amount of time, that it then come back into the school system's name. If we are not able to continue with this type of construction, moving it back into the school system's name, keeping the school system obviously very involved in the entire process of design and development and construction through the entire process, but being able to move it into our name is how we will be able to receive grant funds and move on this project without having to utilize tax dollars. So this is a very rudimentary conceptual design that a local architecture firm has provided for us. This shows 18 courts being able to be put on this site. We are not exactly stuck to this exact design. Like I said, we are going to be working with USTA to be able to come up with a design that works for everyone. But this is just to kind of give a visual of, it would really mostly just be parking and tennis courts with a small clubhouse in the center to be able to have restrooms, concessions, things like that, right in the middle of the complex as well. So it would be a very small complex, not a lot of different activities going on, really focusing in on tennis since we do have Weekly Park that is just down Sango Road. We would be open to the idea of having it fenced in, if that was something that the school was interested in, to keep separation of park and school, or whatever we needed to do to make it the most comfortable for the school to have the park active during the school day, because it would be a public park traditionally. So that is the draft as it stands. We are still very early in this, but the first step does have to be moving the land back into the county's name for us to be able to progress any further with the actual designs and then eventually construction. And that's really all that I have, unless there are any questions on the design.
I have one question. Will that property be available to the children out there during the school day?
Absolutely. We could definitely work with the school through the PE program to see if there were opportunities for them if they wanted to have like exclusive access to the property during a tennis unit or something like that. If we were on a regular day, it would just be an open public space. And so if the school was okay with it being a joint, you know, the kids being out there at the same time as just regular park patrons, that would be acceptable. But then if they were wanting exclusive access, then we would need to schedule that through the Parks Department and do some programming around that to make sure that we let the public know that it would be restricted access on those days.
How would we monitor who from the public will be able to go there and use that facility?
On a regular day, it would be just general open to the public all of the time.
Well, a felon cannot go on school property while the children are there, right?
They are also not allowed in park properties. Parks are also included under those same restrictions with sex offenders and things like that. They would not be allowed in a park, even if it wasn't connected to a school property.
So how would we monitor that?
That's not something that we monitor ourselves. You know, it's really up to the police to be on top of that. I mean, we are not able to monitor the people who walk into every park that we have. That's just not something we're able to do. I wouldn't want to make a promise that I couldn't keep. We don't staff everywhere to keep track of every individual person coming into our property.
For the safety of our kids, I would like Dr. Moon, I would like for something to be in writing to say that somebody will do that. Make sure that no one that's not supposed to be there don't show up there. Someone have to assign them to use of the building unless it's gonna be open to the, if you say it's open to the public, right?
It is.
So that means that anybody can go there anytime during the day.
This would be very similar to the existing parks that are connected to school properties. The fields at Barksdale, the fields at Stokes Park right behind New Providence. There are many schools that have this already working. So I can definitely look into what is actively happening at those properties and how, if that's being mitigated, what they're doing to do that. But those are all city parks right now, and so I would just need to, find out if they are doing anything in those regards, or what laws or rules they may have in place that we could mimic for this property as well.
Thank you. What else? Chair?
You mentioned United States Tennis Association. I'm assuming that's professional athletes.
I'm sorry?
I'm assuming it's professional athletes.
It would be a combination. So USTA is a group that is big on advocacy and growing the sport with amateurs as well as professionals. What they have shown interest in is that Montgomery County currently, with the amount of courts that we have through Austin P, our schools, the city, is just not adequate to be able to host large-scale tournaments, mostly amateur tournaments, but it would be probably a combination.
I'm only getting at that because I'm not familiar with tennis, but I'm familiar with MLB and NFL and NHL, and at those professional events, there's always alcohol sold. And that wouldn't work here.
No.
And I don't know if that's a factor with the United States Tennis Association or not, if they're bringing in or attempting to bring in professional tennis tournaments.
Sure. We do not allow alcohol in any Montgomery County park properties either, so that would not be something we would entertain at any point through the process. That is not something that we currently allow, and is not something that we plan to add to our allowed items. That just adds a whole different level of liability, and is not something we're interested in.
There's a general air law or rule.
Yes.
But I wasn't sure with any professional sport that I'm familiar with.
Sure.
That's something that happens at their sporting events.
This
I'm
is-
familiar with tennis though. Never been to a professional tennis game.
Sure, I would think this is probably gonna be more amateur than it would ever we would be the host to, professional athletes. Not to say that that wouldn't ever happen, but I would say that it would typically be more amateur style, youth tournaments, those types of things would be more, in line with what would be interested in coming to our facility as well.
John, thank you, Mr. Garner. I mean, I'm all for progress, but it concerns me. I know before you can get your grant that you have to have it back in Montgomery County's name. We have a history of obtaining school property and or keeping it after we've obtained it. And since we have this, I certainly hate to lose it. And we have a history of adding at least, 12 classrooms onto our elementary schools, 2 off the top of my head, 3. Actually, that we have additions to our elementary schools, and I'm sure as Clarksville and Montgomery County grows, it's a lot less expensive to add classrooms than it is to build a new elementary school. And that would concern me very much if we gave up our ownership of that property. And I would definitely be against it just for that reason alone. Because like I said, school property, well, all property is very hard to obtain at the present time. And I certainly would not want to lose ownership of the property that we have.
My understanding was this was always intended to be a park connected to a school. So this was just in keeping with that intended use of the land, but I completely understand your concern.
But if we had an addition, and you've got tennis courts and money investment in the tennis courts and the clubhouse, and for us to have our addition, and we'd have to tear it down or whatever, then, that's money wasted too. And it would just concern me if we did not own the property.
Absolutely.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so I was gonna make sure you said that, so this originally was supposed to be a park property. So I guess the question I would have for the district is, in regards to Mr. Patterson saying here is, would we have space to expand if we would need to, if that could be answered at some point in the future here. I actually played varsity tennis, so this is actually pretty exciting for me, because when I was in high school, we didn't have anything like this, and I can definitely see how this would be a great addition to our community. As someone who played tennis and still actually looks for tennis courts and cannot find them actually to this day, this actually be great for that. Will there be any bleachers around for spectators?
I think that that's something that would definitely be part of the conversation once we actually got into true design. As they are currently sitting on this is so rough and really just something that a landscape architect company was willing to just give us a visual. We really haven't gotten into the specifics of what we would have. We would want there to be some areas that could be kind of the championship courts that would maybe have some spectator seating incorporated. We just don't know exactly what that might look like. One of the main driving forces for this was with the master plan that Montgomery County Parks did in 2020. They did an assessment of our community and what we are adequate and deficient in as it pertains to amenities. And we are currently today 18 courts deficient for our community and our population. If we do not start addressing that in some regard, we will continue to become more deficient, and by 2035 could be up to 42 courts deficient if we aren't trying to eat away at that number. So that's one of our potential driving forces with this is just we've noticed that Montgomery County as a whole is extremely deficient when it comes to tennis, which you can attest to yourself.
Yeah, I can attest to that wholeheartedly, and I think it'd be amazing if it was there, if we could develop some type of partnership with the school, or I guess not partnership, it's there, but the school would have some type of use of that facility, that'd be even better.
Right.
But yeah.
Mr. Nelson?
I'd like to know, what went into your decision-making process as far as deciding to put this tennis course in this area versus any other area in the city?
This specific location was chosen because of that, known that this was intended to be park property at some point anyway. Having that as you attested to, property is not something that anyone's easily coming by. So having undeveloped land that was already designated or set aside as future park property, we felt like that was a perfect space. It is a smaller property as well, so tennis typically is a sport that is more successful when it's by itself, when it doesn't have a lot of other sports or other activities within the property. And so we felt like that this would be able to be a space where we could maximize the use of the facility with a large number of courts, but not overdoing it with a lot of other things that we may feel obligated to do if we had more acreage. So that's really where the choice came for this location, was just access as well as size.
Yeah, I remember Dr. Worthington mentioned the fact that it could be a walking trail or something out there for the families to use to exercise and stuff like that. But the reason why he said that he wanted to be a walking trail was because if we needed to expand the building, we would have the space to do it. My question is, are we planning on expanding that building anytime soon?
Yes, if I may speak, I just looked at the board packet and our letter was not in it. And I think our letter actually answers a lot of these questions. So Ms. Burgett has been working with the facilities engineering department for several months on this, and they have looked at these questions for expandability. So this does not interfere with any future expansion of the building, which would be further to the west of the property. This portion of the land was always intended to be for county use. As a park, what that park looked like was always sort of up in the air, and this sort of came about as a new opportunity. We did look at the tennis aspect of services, and this does open up a large number of opportunities for our schools that don't currently exist in terms of tennis and compliance with tournament requirements and such. So it is something that we've been working together with the county on, and I think at this time, our recommendation would be, since it is sort of a win-win, that we allow the general counsel to explore with the county what this, if this agreement is possible and what that might look like.
Margaret? Any other questions?
I've got two things. Exit 8, where the city has started a recreation area out there. Do they intend, to your knowledge, that they have intentions of putting tennis courts out there?
To my knowledge, they do not. Their initial focus is going to be soccer, from what I understand, because we are also extremely deficient in our multi-purpose and soccer fields as a community.
I mean, that would be something I'd definitely like to check into. And I'm gonna switch some of y'all to pickleball. We don't have that large court. But what concerns me, the county had just purchased or donated 9 holes of the golf course between Sango Road and 41A that y'all have for walking trails and things of that nature that the county does own at the present time, correct? Directly across the street from this property here. And my question is, why can't you put the tennis court over there on property that you already own, and it would be in Montgomery County's name?
So the Weekly property, I think kind of goes back to that. It's a very large property. There are some other plans for that facility with walking paths. Cross country also is somewhere that's a sport that we're trying to accommodate there in a better way once we do renovations to that property. So I think what we were scared of going with tennis there is, as I said, tennis sometimes doesn't play well with others, and so we didn't want to put a center somewhere that was going to fail, where we have over-programmed or over-developed a property where then the people who play that sport aren't willing to or interested in going to those courts. We want to put them somewhere where they're actually going to be utilized and be the best service to our community.
See, that concerns me. You know, you want it in the best service, the best property. Excuse me. And to me, putting it next to school is not the best alternative. And especially, how much land is in that, that used to be a 9-hole golf course over there? Do you know approximately how many acres that is?
Yes, that's Weekly Park, and it's 66 acres.
66 acres. And how much land area is this proposed on our school property?
This property, after it has been resurveyed,
That's
approximately 11 acres.
And again, my thinking is take a portion of that property in the corner where it wouldn't upset the running trail or the cross country and the trails like that. That concerns me, especially when it's so close. And again, I emphasize how valuable property is, and once we have it, I don't want to let go of it.
Any other questions?
I just want to say one last comment. That Mr. Norm said that it sparked my mind here is this would be a big deal for our high schools. So I just want to make that clear. We don't currently have a complex like this for the big tournaments, and we have to go around LCP's schedule right now in order to do so. So this would be a big deal for that.
I think one of our thoughts with that specifically was having it connected to a school property. Then if there was need for overflow parking for school events, then it's natural to use school parking right there at Carmel. It just kind of made sense because we do want to service the high schools. That is a big driving force on this is servicing the high school needs with the tennis courts as well. So we felt like this was a nice fit, but obviously this is your decision to make. So I just wanted to bring you all the information we have currently, because we are still very early stages in this process, because the first step really does have to be changing the name on the property for us to be able to take advantage of design dollars as a grant opportunity.
Last question from my standpoint. How much, if you were to be awarded the grant, how much money are we talking about?
It is typically, my understanding is that it is not a dollar amount, it is design work that they themselves take on the job of doing the design and using their expertise in the field of tennis, and they do the design for you and keep you involved in the process, but that they just provide the professional services to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda, surplus property operations, Northeast High School, Montgomery County.
Yes, so board members, in your packet, there is information about surplus property. It is board policy that all CMCSS property be declared surplus and salvage by the Board of Education prior to the property's sale or disposal. So there is some information there on some property declared surplus or salvage at some of those locations. So that will be for your review to vote on then the next formal meeting.
Okay, thank you. The next item is resolution for Kirkwood Elementary School design non-enrollment first read.
Good evening, board. It is my honor to be here this evening to speak to you about something y'all probably expected, and that is the need for a new elementary school. We'll jump right in, and so you're familiar with this. This is the 30-year growth of the district. Our county continues to grow in population, and the school district continues to grow as well. Our average growth is approximately 670 students per year, 670 on average new students every year. And this year, as you can see, we're at 38,843 as of today. Our 40th day is this week, and that's the day that we use to measure annually. We grew about 1,100 students. And it was just pointed out to me a moment ago that if you take out the 1920 school year, this is actually the third year of over 1,000 student growth that we've seen. So we continue our growth trend upward. Most of the significant growth is in the north and northeastern regions of the county. Just a little statistic, this year there were 839 new elementary students residing in regions 1 and 2. So that's the north and northeastern area of the county. So about 70% of our student growth still occurs in the north and northeastern regions of the county. So what does that look like? Looks like this. So this is the elementary school boundary map. It's got some information on there. There's a series of numbers. The first number is the capacity of our buildings. The second number is the capacity of our campus utilizing portables. And the third number in the parentheses is the number of portables on each campus. If it's in red, it's greater than 100%. If it's orange, it's between 90 and 100%. And if it's green, that's where we want it to be. Our target is 85%, and green is between 70 and 90%. If it's purple, then it's underutilized. We don't want to see purple. And the blue numbers, once again, are the portables. What this map indicates is that, on average, all of the elementary schools in the county are at approximately 95% capacity on average. It also indicates that 8 elementary schools are above 100% capacity. Those are in the north and the northeastern areas of the county. There are 55 portable classrooms on the 10 elementary school campuses: Barker's Mill, Glen Ellen, Hazelwood, Northeast, Oakland, Pisgah, Rossview, Sango, and West Creek. And these schools are most likely to be affected by the addition of new elementary capacity. Elementary schools have grown by 2,592 new students since Oakland Elementary School was opened 9 years ago. Now, we have added 5 12 classroom additions and picked up approximately 1,300 new student seats over that time to address that capacity. However, this continued growth is driving the need to build additional elementary school capacity in Montgomery County. Excuse me. Luckily for us, CMCSS owns a 15-acre pad-ready building site on the Kirkwood campus for an elementary school. You know how the process works. CMCSS staff develops long-range plans to address the capacity needs of our schools. Those plans go through a collaborative effort between the committees of the Montgomery County Commission and CMCSS based on many factors. And those plans are then approved for funding by our elected county commissioners. In 2020, a building plan was approved by the commission for a new 3-school complex to address school capacities and enrollment growth. And that's a photograph of that complex. It's the Kirkwood complex. The first of those buildings is the middle school that opened up this year. Kirkwood Middle School was an opportunity for our community to be able to see the positive impact of this building process on capacities at the middle school level. Under construction is the high school, and it's approaching 40% complete, and it is scheduled to open in August of 2023. And finally, the third building pad is the construction ready pad, already designed and graded for an elementary school. You'll remember that we selected the Rossview prototype floor plan for the design of the pad, which was delivered through an intergovernmental agreement with the IDB in Montgomery County. And this pad is sized for that elementary prototype. So I wanted to walk you through sort of our decision-making process in our recommendation. So for this resolution, we did consider several options. I just want to note that the images are informational only, and these are not to scale, nor are they building plans ready for construction. But our engineering manager, Brian Lopp, put these together so that you could understand his thought process as he compared these options. He used contractor data from 6 active school construction projects in Middle Tennessee. And if he were here tonight, I think he would describe that information as volatile. because of the building market. But what he looked at was, first of all, the Rossview prototype. And we knew that it would fit on this site. This is a 102,000 square foot, 51 classroom, 842 student BEP building. And it was estimated to be at approximately a $36.8 million construction project. The timeline for delivery of this school would be design approval no later than January of 2023, bid and approval in May of 2023, construction through June of 2024, and as long as the supply chain cooperates, operational in August of 2024. The second option he looked at is the expanded prototype. So this is the prototype elementary school with the additional 12 classroom addition built onto it. This is a 121,000 square foot, 63 classroom, 1,056 student BEP option. So this is approximately 25% larger than the prototype. The estimate for construction was $43.5 million for this particular model. The timeline was similar to the previous. Design approval no later than January of 2023, bid and approval in May of 2023, construction through June of 2024, and operational in August of 2024. The third option he looked at was a 4-story, 230,000 square foot, 1,320 student BEP. So the first option we looked at was 25% larger. This is 50% larger than our current prototype. And the estimates for this project were $92.3 million. The thing that really got us on this is the timeline, because since this is a new design, it would require an additional 6 months for design. So the timeline changes a bit. Design approval would be no later than January of 2023. Bid and approval would be November of 2023. And we might need additional 3 to 6 months for construction time for this building, as we've never constructed it before. So construction would be through 2025, and this building would not be operational until August of 2025. The multi-story building did save approximately 3 acres of land, which allowed us to account for the additional parking and play areas for the additional 480 or so students that would be housed in that building. However, it was the timeline that really differed from the previous 2 options. So based on that analysis, the best option at this time, in our opinion, is the expanded prototype. With our current growth rate, the timeline is of utmost importance to us. This option provides the most capacity delivered in the shortest amount of time, and this option also strikes the best balance between delivering the capacity and the economic impact on Montgomery County. So our recommendation is for your consideration of the resolution, which is included in your board packets. We've included a draft for you to review, but this is for the design fees for the Kirkwood Elementary School with the 12 classroom addition at a sum of $1.4 million. The timeline shows the board's consideration through October, and then November going to the county budget committee, and then finally to the full county commission in November, and a target of a spring bid date. Also, it's important to realize fast tracking of this project is critical to enabling the construction of the new elementary school to be opened by the fall of 2024 in order to address student enrollment growth. Like I said, there's a draft in your board packets. So are there any questions?
Yes.
How many students is gonna be in that 4-tier elementary?
The 4-tier option was for 1,320 students, which
Versus this option is what, a little over 1,000?
this option is a little more than 1,000, and it sort of is not unlike other buildings at this point. So Glen Ellen, Rossview, Oakland, Minglewood, there are several buildings in Montgomery County that are of that size.
You know, might be jumping the gun, you know, like, just like Rossville Elementary now is 120% over capacity. Between then and when this elementary school is built, then besides rezoning, there's nothing we can do about reducing their 120%.
So we've looked at some different scenarios of what the capacity of this building would do, and this building would allow us to alleviate overcrowding at those 8 schools that I mentioned earlier. What's also important to know is we have engaged with the County Commission and the Land Acquisition Committee and the Clarksville Regional Planning Commission through the land acquisition process to acquire the next several elementary schools. So we haven't built an elementary school since 2014. Previously, we had been rigorously building elementary schools. We're probably back on that schedule, and we are looking at acquiring those next locations as we speak.
Mr. Nelson?
So what I'm talking about, in the next 2 years, say everything went smoothly by the book, and the elementary school opened in August of 24, I believe you said. But in the meantime, all the students, there's no lockers, they have to carry the books in the back, on their back all day long. And unless we rezone those areas, so it's gonna stay that way until August of 24, correct?
That is probably correct. Portable classrooms are available capacity for overcrowding at schools until such time as we can add permanent capacity in the buildings. And then once we have that permanent capacity available, that's when we can perform rezoning.
Yeah, Mr. Nelson?
Good evening. How long do you anticipate, once this building is built, that it's actually at capacity? Because if you take all those other schools that are currently above capacity, and with the growth that you said that is occurring in the northeast portion of Clarksville, how long do you anticipate before this new building is at capacity?
So until all of the zoning takes place, we don't really have anything but conjecture. I mentioned earlier that 85% was our target, so that's probably what we'll shoot for upon opening of the new building, and then also try to apply to the other buildings that are overcrowded now. And then our construction schedule indicates the land acquisition process being completed within the next year, and then the next elementary school coming before you for design purposes, and a 2025 opening, I think is what we have scheduled.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda, SL accountability, Dr. Lund.
Yes, Dr. Kimmy Saharsky is going to present to us some accountability data for release.
Glorious evening, and they have just released our accountability data, and some good news and a lot of work coming up for the school district. And so the first thing, Tennessee was audited by the Department of Education around the accountability measures. And so as we move forward, we're going to see some of the measures change in this academic year. Currently, the first thing they've done is that the report card won't have grades on it as it gets released. And they told us that the end of October, or the end of September and August. And they changed the due date for the report card. what I'm getting ready to share with you is our annual measurable objectives. So they set some scores and some data that we have to hit, some targets, but then they release in the public in something called a report card, all the information and additional things such as the funding of schools, attendance rates, etc. And that is being delayed all the way into November. So what was released is each of these are the indicators that we are navigating, and there is a formula for elementary and middle, there's a formula for high school, and there's an additional formula for the district. So if you look at the right here, there's the chart that shows how the elementary and middles are measured against the high schools as well. And you'll notice that there's two markings. One of them is if the color is solid, that's called an absolute target. And then if there is a double option for the target, they have it with the stripes, and that's called AMO and absolute. So the way this is set up is for some of the targets that we have to work with, they identify what's called an absolute. If you hit this target, they automatically give you the goal, the 0 to 4, whatever that number is. But you also have the option, if you don't hit this absolute, to hit your AMO. Annual measurable objectives for schools is based on the population and the work of that school. They're being compared against themselves. So the absolute is a target that the entire state's held to. It's an outright target. But you also have the option of being successful if you meet your own targets. So, as we start, here's how the district is set up. We're held to all of it, every piece of the target. We also, if you'll notice, for each of the different targets, we have the option of the AMO and the absolute, and then that is averaged with what they call a value added score. So they take the best of AMO and absolute, and then they take the value added, and they average it and give the district a score. So here is what we are looking at. So 3rd through 5th, success rate is all the content areas assessed with an average of the students that are proficient. This year they only did math and ELA. One, the social studies test wasn't ready for the children that were in elementary, and that may not come back onto the table. And they were just field testing out and setting goals and targets in social studies for some of the other grades. So since they didn't have the same availability across all the content area this year and the previous year that was used, they did just the ELA and math because we have those targets all along. So when you see the word success rate, that's the math and ELA proficiency for each of the grade levels. So success rate 3 through 5, our target, we did pretty well. A 3 means we met expected goals. For the absolute performance, if you got greater than 45% proficient within your population, that was a 4. I believe 40% was the 3. And so we hit a 3. Value added, so of the AMO and absolute, we have a 3 average. And then they add in value added, which we did extremely well this year, and we have a 4. Remember, value added is, did the children experience an academics gain? And a 3 is expected gain. 4 means we exceeded the expected gain. So the average between the 3 and the 4 is a 3.5, and that becomes our score. They repeat the same process with 6th through 8th grade. We ended up with a 1.5. They did the same thing again in high school, and that would be English 1, English 2, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. We ended up with a 1.5 for the indicator in high school. Chronically out of school is if a student misses 10% of their enrollment within an academic year. And that is any day I'm not in school. Excused absent, unexcused absent, out of school suspension. If I am not in school, then I'm considered absent in this measure. And so if I miss more than 10% of my enrollment, then I'm identified as chronically absent. And so we did not meet our AMO. This is actually an impact that we're seeing as we are navigating the pandemic and coming out the other side. And then in the absolute performance, the state adjusted their targets, and so we did get a 2 there. And then for the value added, we are improving that target for populations and getting them back in school and re-engaged. So we ended up with a 2.5. The ELA proficiency that you see there is the gains experienced by our non-English speaking students. They take a test when they arrive or at the beginning of each year, all students identified as English language learners, and then they take an assessment at the end of the year. There is a gain that is expected that they are, their rate at acquiring academic language, and that's what they're measured against. And so if a student makes expected academic language acquisition, then that's considered a 3. And as you can see in the AMO, we have a 4 absolute performance, we had a 3. And so when you add it to the value added, it was one of our strongest targets this year. The students made the greatest gains was in the EL, and so we ended up with a 4. Graduation rate is lag data. And so once you hit targets like 93, your AMO goes up to 94. That is a difficult target to continue to master every year. And so in the absolute performance, we're over the 92% that's listed, and that's why we have the 3 there. And then value added is the improvement in that score, and we ended up with a 2. The goal here is that you would like to have 2.1 or better. You would like to be in the advancing or exemplary. Montgomery County is 2.5 and advancing, so that is an excellent goal. They do this same measure over for each of the subgroups. So I've provided the federally identified subgroups, and as you go down, you can see we're over 2 in indicators for the subgroups, except for one, that is students with disabilities. We ended up with a 1.67. So in order to be identified as a reward school, you had to have an average of 3.1 after you do all the measures for your building. And listed is the schools. We have 10 elementaries and a high school have been identified as reward schools. The state has 2 other areas that they identify. Priority schools, these are schools at the lowest end of the performance in the state of Tennessee. And then they have focus schools. These are schools that have a subgroup that struggled. The school may have made average gains, etc., but they have a subgroup that may be struggling. And so they get identified as what we call a focus school, targeted assisted or additional targeted assisted. CMCSS has no priority schools. We've never had a priority school. But we do have 4 targeted assisted schools. We have 3 middle schools. Each of them, you can see the target, the subgroup that they've been identified for. And then we have 1 high school, and you can see the targets that they're identified for. Each of these schools receive additional support, not only from the district, we have always provided that, but the state also provides additional support to these schools. And then we have no priority schools. Questions? I know it's exciting, we did great.
Yeah, you did a good job. But a question is,
Yes,
I saw Kenwood had a lot of students with disabilities.
Kenwood Middle or Kenwood High?
Both of them.
Kenwood
No,
Middle School.
Kenwood Middle, right.
Yeah, Kenwood Middle School was targeted for students with disability. And students with disability include students with IEPs, except for students identified as gifted or students identified in their primary as what is known as functionally delayed. It does not include students with Section 504 plans. Often people believe that that's part of that measure. Section 504 is part of OCR, the Office of Civil Rights, and it's about having a disability and being able to access the environment, not about a specialized curriculum as students with disabilities works. And so Kenwood Middle School, I want to say, has a 15% student with disability rate. I'll get the exact number and send to you, but that was their targeted group. There were struggles with that.
In the other schools that have students with disabilities, what are they doing that Kenwood is not doing?
Well, we have 3 and they're all targeted for students with disabilities. So different schools have different structures in place in their building and work with their students a little different. I can get a report that gives you a delineation of what each of these schools are doing when they focus on students with disabilities. So they're all doing things like the universal screener, which is required of all students. All students that are identified as students with disabilities should have an appropriate IEP, individual education plan, that has been developed for them. Each of them would have academic goals that have been set for them that they need to be working on. I will say that in 2 of the schools, the students with disabilities was also the group with the greatest chronic absenteeism. So if you're not in school, that makes it a little difficult also to address the issue. But we can get you what the programs look like at each building, because each building would address the students who are actually attending there. It wouldn't be a one-size-fits-all.
Thank you, Ms. Pace.
Margaret?
The struggle with the middle schools, is that typical across the state?
So in most middle schools, the issue is that we transition from elementary to middle school, and sometimes it's trying to catch what a 5th grader going to 6th grader actually knows and where they're at, and starting and getting them caught up. So you often see struggles in middle schools from 5th to 6th, and then 8th to high school in the Algebra 1 and the English 1, as they transition from 8th grade to high school, change in how the schools operate, changes in the expectations, the standards, etc. So that is a common theme you do see across middle schools.
Dr. Sarsky, could we get that data for the board though, and just look at our middle schools in comparison to state?
I can, not a problem whatsoever. I'll have it to you tomorrow.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you.
Absolutely.
County Commissioners, do you have any remarks? Board members?
Yes, so good evening. It is hard to believe, but we are wrapping up the first quarter of the school year as students and educators are anxiously awaiting fall break that does begin this Friday. It's been a busy 9 weeks for our faculty and staff, and I know they're all looking forward to a much-deserved rest and rejuvenation. We're continuing to seek qualified candidates for specific positions within the district. Over the next few weeks, we will be hosting a few hiring events. On Saturday, October 15th, we will have an opportunity for bus driver candidates at Northeast Middle School from 8 to 11 a.m. Applicants will be able to drive a bus and learn all about the sign-on bonuses and benefits packages, as well as our training program. On Thursday, October 20th, we will host an event specifically for educational assistants and substitute teachers from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. here at Central Services. Over the past couple of months, we have encouraged feedback from stakeholders in our effort toward continuous improvement. One message that we have consistently heard was about the inability to track our buses to help families know when their child's bus will arrive at the stop both before and after school. So we have listened and we have responded with a potential solution. After fall break, we will be implementing a Stop Finder app That will allow some families in our pilot schools. Communication will be sent out to these families with instructions for downloading and accessing their child's information. They will be able to set it specifically to their child. They can receive alerts when the bus is a couple stops away to make sure that they don't miss the bus in the morning. We are optimistic about this pilot, that it will be successful and hopefully expand to all of our schools over the next couple of months. Finally, our cabinet members were appreciative to spend some time with community members last week at the second annual Power Breakfast. We were able to share departmental updates along with some goals for the upcoming school year. We emphasize the need for our continued partnership and collaboration with all of our stakeholders as we strive to be better than ever together. Mr. Garland, this concludes my report for the evening.
Thank you all for attending. This meeting is adjourned.